This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by ERI. ERI has a mission to protect people, the planet, and your privacy, and is the largest fully integrated IT and electronics asset disposition provider and cybersecurity-focused hardware destruction company in the United States, and maybe even the world. For more information on how ERI can help your business properly dispose of outdated electronic hardware devices, please visit eridirect.com. Welcome to another edition of the Impact Podcast. I'm John Shegerian, and this is a very special edition of the Impact Podcast today because we're so lucky to have with us today from Portugal, Christian Kroll. He's the founder and CEO of Ecosia. Welcome to the Impact Podcast, Christian.
Thank you very much for having me.
You know, Christian, I don't think we've done about 1,500 or so interviews over the last 14 years. I don't think we've been ever so lucky enough to have a guest on from Portugal. Tell us a little bit about Portugal. Is it a beautiful and wonderful country like everybody says it is?
Yeah, I personally really love it. I'm basically spending the lockdown here in Portugal instead of Berlin, where I'm usually based. And yeah, I almost don't dare to say it, but I'm having a good time here during lockdown because we are lucky to have a bigger house somewhere in the nature, and that's more pleasant than an apartment in Berlin.
Listen, that's a great thing. You figured out a way to get through this tragic pandemic period with having a nice situation. No one wants anyone to wake up unhappy and not in a nice environment. It sounds like it's beautiful there. Are the beaches and the food amazing over there?
Yeah, that's all great. So even restaurants are open again. I mean, in Berlin, still everything is closed. So we're benefiting from really good situation here. So, but I'm also aware that there are many people who have been affected really negatively. So,
that's something to always keep in mind. Christian, what you've created here, Ecosia, and for our listeners and viewers who want to go on your website during this podcast, I'm on your website. It's just amazing. And the impact you're making and the relevance of what you're doing is huge. And we're going to get into that in a little bit. And for our listeners who want to go on the website, it's www.ecosia.org, ecosia.org. Christian, tell us, though, a little bit about your life, your background leading up to the founding of this wonderful website and the great mission that you're on.
Yeah, so I was born, I think, 36 years ago in the former GDR, so then the east of Germany, and basically spent my youth in a small town called Wittenberg, which is also the hometown of Martin Luther, who was the reformer of the Catholic Church in Germany. So that was 500 years ago. Since then, not much happened in my hometown, but still, it's a nice place. Basically, so went to school there, then studied business administration and also finished my studies. But I always had the feeling that I wanted to do something a little bit different than just a normal career. So I wanted to have a little bit of a positive impact, but I didn't really know what this could mean. So after my studies, I decided to travel around the world and take a year off. Actually, it was even 1.5 years almost. And half a year of that I spent in Nepal, so one of the economically poorest countries of the world. And there really, so I always knew that there were countries where people earn less money and have lower quality of life. But knowing that and actually really living that for a while are two different things. So for me, that was really the point where I decided, okay, I'm lucky that I was born in a country like Germany where I have all these opportunities, and there's so many people who don't have the same opportunities. So because I was just lucky, I didn't do anything for it. I basically saw my obligation to give back, to really help those people who don't have the same opportunities. And I firmly believe that every child, no matter where it's born on the world, should have the same opportunities, more or less. And we're still very, very far away from that. So I wanted to, basically dedicate my life to achieve that. And what I did then, because I already during university, I was working a little bit on internet projects. So what I did then in Nepal, I started a first project where I wanted to help people in Nepal earn a little bit of money for development projects in Nepal. That didn't work out. So then I continued traveling. I spent almost 1 year in Latin America. And there I observed the massive destruction of our ecosystems, of our planet, exploitation of people. And I also found out about climate change. So that was also a massive wake up moment for me. And I realized that one of the best things you can do if you want to help people, let's say the nature, so biodiversity, but also want to solve climate change, one of the best things you can do is either plant trees or protect trees. So I got really excited about trees. That was basically, so I read everything I could find about trees and forests and figured how important they are to solving climate change, but also how great they are at solving many of the problems that we have. So water scarcity, food, not enough availability of good nutrition. So all that and many other things, income for people in low income countries. So all that can be solved through tree planting. And so I decided that I really want to plant a lot of trees and to basically have a positive impact on the planet.
Right.
And because of my background in technology or in building websites, I then decided to start basically a search engine that is focused on tree planting.
Now,
so
you wanted to start now. How old were you then? How old were you when this epiphany happened?
I think that was at the age of 23 or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So were you already a computer engineer, software engineer? Did you know how to build search engines, or this was just your idea and now you had to put it together like all other entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so I learned basic programming, but really I was not very good at it.
Okay.
But it was good enough to basically understand what the developers are doing. But then I just hired basically a few people in Nepal. Salaries were quite low, so I could afford that without having external funding. And then also just a few friends helped me to build this up. But it was a lot of my time also I just dedicated on figuring out what the code is doing and how it can be improved, at least in the early days. And luckily, after a few years, when the project was up and running, I could hand over this task to people who are more qualified. So I hope nobody will ever find the code that I wrote, because I think it's probably quite embarrassing. But in the early days, I had to do many of the things just myself.
So how long did it take to actually launch your first version of Ecosia?
I think this was because I already built various projects before that were kind of search related. So yeah. I think it only took us a few months in the end. Oh. So maybe half a year to get everything up and running. But that was a rather rudimentary version of it. Today's version of Ecosia is much better and really kind of can compare to the other search engines out there. But in the early days, it was rather slow. It often broke. The results were not that great. But fortunately, there were enough people to actually use it that we kind of could still build on that very early version.
So tell me if I've got this right. You've gone on since then, and Ecosia has become the world's largest not-for-profit search engine that's planted over 120 million trees in over 30 countries.
Yeah, that's, when you say those numbers, it sounds really massive. Yeah, it's we're really proud of that. In the end, it's the users who are planting those trees. We're only the tool basically that makes it happen. So we have 15 million users, most of them in Europe, but also quite a lot of people in the United States and also many other countries. And all those people basically, they care about climate, they care about people, they care about biodiversity. And if you're one of those people, then switching the search engine to have a positive impact on the world is one of the easiest things that you can do. And this is how we've basically gained all these users. And yeah, it feels really good. With every search you're contributing to tree planting.
Done. How many? I want to ask you so many questions, but let's go back to, you're sitting in Portugal. You seem like the most gentle and humble person I could ever meet. How many people are working with you? Do you have 100 people? Is it just you and 5 other people? How many people are working with you to keep this now amazing machine going?
So I haven't met them for a while because we've been on lockdown for a very long time, and we added more people since then. But I think we're roughly 100 people now. So most of them based in Berlin, but also we have people in many, many other locations.
So, let's go over this then. So people can just go on your website, which I'm on right now, which is a beautiful website, ecosia.org, ECOSIA.org. And they could use that as their search engine. And the more they use it, the more credits are built for trees to be planted instead of net carbon bad things happening. It's not even net neutral. It's carbon negative, huh?
Yeah. So my goal was never to be neutral, because when I learned about climate change, I realized that being just carbon neutral isn't enough. And so basically, Ecosia works like any other search engine. So you type in your search terms. Sometimes you see ads right next to the search results, and if you click on one of those advertisements, then we earn money. The big difference, though, is that we don't use this money to pay dividends to shareholders. There's nothing wrong with that, but we don't do that. We basically, after just deducting our own costs, all of the profits go to tree planting projects, and we have over 30 projects now across the entire planet, planting a tree every second, thanks to this income that we're generating from the searches. And also from a user perspective, I think it's really cool, because I'm personally doing probably dozens of searches every day. That adds up to thousands of searches every year. And we calculated that each search basically absorbs around 1 kilogram of CO2 from the atmosphere, thanks to the tree planting, which means that adds up to a few tons of CO2 removed from the atmosphere. And considering that, the average German has a footprint of 11 tons. I think in the United States is a bit more of CO2 per year. And just by switching your search engine, you can actually really remove a significant share of that. And it's so easy to do. So that's why I think so many people start using us.
And it's just basically advertising built. So there's no net difference to the user, except that they're doing something good for the planet while they're using their internet browser.
Yeah, there's even an additional benefit that many people forget when they're using us, because we're focusing so much on trees, but we're also really focusing on privacy as well. So you get that part on top, that we're tracking much less information than all the big ones, the big competitors. And that's that you get
by
for
the
free.
way, and Christian, I don't want to, that's a very, very big point. With GDPR coming to the EU in 2018 and now all around the world, privacy and data protection and data privacy and protecting people's rights and privacy is a big deal. So you're saying your search engine is even kinder to the users in terms of it's tracking much less information than the other search engines.
Yes.
Yeah. That's incredible. I've read a lot about you preparing for today's episode. And one of the things I love that you discussed, but I want you to share with our listeners and our viewers, Christian, is you're shifting the mindset from sustainability to regeneration. Can you share a little bit about what you mean to our listeners when you talk about that?
Yeah, so for me, sustainability is nice. We have to basically get to a level where we at least don't further increase the amount of carbon that we have in the atmosphere. But it's not enough. So we could have switched to a sustainable economy maybe in the 80s or 90s when this was still possible. But now we're at the moment where we've already put too much CO2 into the atmosphere. And just reducing our footprint won't be enough. We really need to think differently and think way beyond that. And that's what we're doing, for example. So if you're searching with Ecosia, you're not only sustainable, you're actually massively positive when it comes to your climate impact. You're really removing a lot of CO2 from the atmosphere. And this is, I think, this kind of business model or this kind of mindset is super important for the next few decades, because it's not going to be enough if just everybody slowly reduces their footprint. We really have, and that's also, I think, boring. If the maximum you can do is not have a negative impact, that to me sounds super boring. I would really want to have a massive positive impact. And this also creates a lot of new opportunities. And once we kind of remove this imaginary threshold of 100% renewable or carbon neutral, then a lot of new things become possible. For example, we're like many internet companies, we run a lot of servers, and these servers run on renewable energy, but we decided not to stop at 100% renewable energy. There's no reason. Why should you stop at 100% renewable energy? We're at, I think, 200, 300% now. So we're just adding more capacity. And there's no reason why, I don't know, the other big tech companies, they could do the same, and they could have a massive positive impact. And I think this is what will be necessary in the next decades. We can't just, I think all chief sustainability officers of big companies should rename their title and call themselves chief regeneration officers, because we can't afford to be so slow. We have to think way, way beyond that. And it's also, if you start taking that mindset, you suddenly also really, you can maybe reshape the business model even. Like, why should your company only have, let's say, no negative impact on the planet? You could have a massive positive impact. So for me, this word regeneration, that is basically the word of the 21st century. So far we've lived in a world where we destroyed. So the previous theme was destruction. Now we go through this very brief phase of sustainability, but right after that, we actually have to go into the mode of regeneration until we reach a point where we actually can really potentially have long-term sustainability, if the planet is really functioning and can really provide for everyone, not only every human, but also the ecosystems are all working. And yeah, I think this will have to last many, many decades now. We have to really regenerate for many decades.
I mean, Christian, you're a very young man. You've already done huge things to make a positive impact and make the world a better place. But the numbers that you just shared, if you've already planted 125 million trees, I'm on your website right now, and it's really fun because it shows how many trees the searches have provided for. And you're saying only 15 million users. And I don't say that lightly. I don't mean only as a bad terminology, but I use only as, wait a second, there's hundreds of millions of users around the world. So imagine if Christian keeps up his mission for years to come, and 2 years from now or 3 years from now, there's 100 million users. You're going to plant billions of trees around the world over time. Is this not what is going to happen with Ecosia?
Well, I really hope, because we actually need 1 trillion trees, so that's 1,000 billion trees in the next 2 or 3 decades.
Yeah,
and it takes a lot of effort to plant those trees, and also quite a lot of money. But yeah, if we had 100% of the search market, then we could definitely plant hundreds of billions of trees actually, and really make a massive impact on the world's climate and ecosystems. And there's no reason why we shouldn't aim for that. I mean, currently we have, with our 15 million users, we have not even 1% market share globally.
wow.
Yeah, so there's a lot of potential still.
So the delta of opportunity for your growth is over 99%, which is just amazing. Because what you're going to do to affect change in the world, effectuate change, what you and your colleagues, and of course your great platform you've built, is just incredible. I mean, it's just amazing. And you're saying right now the majority of users are in Europe. So the goal is, let's get North America involved. Let's get Asia involved. Let's get other continents to know about the Christian Kroll story, the Ecosia story, and get using this great platform?
Yeah, so definitely. I mean, they're 99% of the population isn't using us yet, so there's still a long way to go. Yeah.
Hey, you also did something very interesting that I want you to share, because we have so many entrepreneurs that watch the show. And for those who've just joined us or you're just tuned in, we've got Christian Kroll with us. This is a really special human being. He's the founder and CEO of Ecosia. You can find Ecosia at www.ecosia.org, ecosia.org. Christian, you did something in 2018. You turned Ecosia into a steward-owned company. What do you mean by that? What does that even mean? And what kind of change does that effectuate of how you run the company and how you message the company?
Yeah, so that was, I think a very big step and a big decision for myself. It basically meant that I gave up the right to ever sell the company or ever take any profits out of the company. So Ecosia is now worth potentially hundreds of millions. I don't know, a lot of money. But for me, it was never the objective to make a lot of money for myself, but really just to plant the maximum amount of trees. So we made this legally binding and irreversible commitment. And the idea really is to make sure that the purpose of the company can never be changed. This was never about making Christian rich, but this was about getting as many trees planted as possible. And I think with this kind of commitment, it basically makes the whole story just perfect. Before that, if you could sell something like Ecosia, then there's something wrong. Something for me is missing there.
It's a remarkable story, but I don't want to get into any specifics or business, but this is your full-time job, right? Talking about Ecosia and continuing to build it, right, Christian? So you and your colleagues are allowed to draw salaries. You just can't overly enrich yourselves and, buy a big yacht and everyone's on the big yacht running the platform from a big yacht and stuff like that. Is that sort of
yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah, so that's the idea. A normal salary is totally fine, and I also, of course, have to live, pay my rent. So I think that's
right.
Great. But the idea really is that also, if let's say something happens to me and I can't continue leading the company, or I want to stop working for Ecosia for some reason, I just want to retire, then somebody then has to take over who is already part of the company, who is really aligned with our mission and not only kind of brings a lot of money to buy the company, but can really push forward the mission. So for me, that's really completely changing, well, basically the model of a company where not the shareholders are really owners of the company, but basically the team, the employees, maybe the users even own the company. And they're participating in this organization because they want to make our mission happen. And there are a lot of companies who say similar things, but then in the end, if the shareholders disagree, they still have all the power. And we wanted to make sure that this can't happen, that basically the purpose of the company can never be just sold off. And that's why we took that step.
As an entrepreneur myself, but also with so many listeners and viewers as entrepreneurs, where did you even learn that paradigm and what gave you that epiphany? It's fascinating and I respect it so much. And it's really remarkable because you're a unique human being, Christian. But who came up with that paradigm, or where did you replicate it from?
So I think I observed this kind of transformation that I described earlier, that there was a brand that I really liked, especially a lot of organic food brands in Germany. They had really strong ideals in the beginning, and then at some point they got sold to one of the big food corporations. And then suddenly small, subtle changes started happening, and it just wasn't that nice anymore. And I really, as a customer, I felt like this is really like my trust basically was abused and is now just used for making profit. And just didn't want this to happen to my company. And then when we started investigating, I found out that there's even a growing network of entrepreneurs in Berlin and also in Germany and also in Europe. We call this the purpose movement, basically. So there are quite a few other companies like a sustainable condom brand, for example, or
Right.
online shopping site for green products that are basically doing the same model. And I realized I just really resonate with the values of those people, and it's much more fun to work with them. And we now have quite a few companies that basically follow the same model. There's something like maybe a bubble or a kind of a movement starting in, I think, with Berlin as the epicentrum, but a lot of companies are doing similar things at the moment. And I personally find this really interesting because I think many of the problems that we have at the moment are to some extent caused by putting too much emphasis on profit maximization and too much emphasis on shareholder value. And if this gets too much emphasis, then, I don't know, the climate, biodiversity, people suddenly become less important. And for me, this maybe what we're doing is a little bit extreme, but it's at least an other alternative on the other side of the spectrum, where really the purpose and the whole environment of the company are much more important than making profit. Of course, we have to be profitable, otherwise we couldn't survive as a business. But it's not about profit maximization. It's about really achieving our purpose. And I think a lot of, especially young people who are looking for a job, are looking for such a kind of a company. I also see a lot of entrepreneurs who realize either immediately, for them, it's especially younger people also realize, I don't want to become rich. I want to have a decent income, but it's not about earning millions and buying a big yacht. That's not important to me. So I realized that there's a new generation, at least in my bubble, basically. I feel there's a new generation.
Right. I agree with you. There's you represent, I mean, my children are your age, and I think your generation is a generation that's going to come and take what was the beginning of the sustainability revolution and really make it an evolution around the world and really make the world a better place. I think your generation is just already doing such a great job, and you're a great representative of that. Each search removes about how much CO2 from the air? Each search, just so we have a little bit of a barometer.
Around 1 kilogram of CO2.
1 kilogram. That's wonderful. You know, as an entrepreneur, Christian, what do you think? You know, it took you this long to get 15 million users. How long do you think it will take from you to go from 15 to, like, just say 50 or 100? What's your thoughts right now?
I generally don't make projections, but we've seen like massive growth waves. For example, whenever like something really bad happens to forests, people start looking for how can I help?
Really?
So if there are wildfires or if the Amazon is getting cut down and the media start talking about it, then we have kind of huge waves of installs. And we had years where we grew more, or even months where we grew more than 50 or 100%. And if this happens again, then we might quickly be at 50 million users. Also, the beauty of exponential growth is that, every time you double, we add 15 million more. So
that's just wonderful. That's just wonderful. Well, Christian, you're always invited back on this podcast and to spread the word. And for all our listeners and viewers out there, please go to Christian's great website, www.ecosia.org, ECOSIA.org. Download it to be your server and your search platform. And not only is it going to make the world a better place, but as Christian said, it also is great for your own privacy. Christian Kroll, you are making a big impact. You are making the world a better place. I'm so grateful for your mission and your vision. God bless you. Keep doing your great work, and I hope we get to meet one day in the future together.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by Engage. Engage is a digital booking platform revolutionizing the talent booking industry. With thousands of athletes, celebrities, entrepreneurs, and business leaders, Engage is the go-to spot for booking talent, for speeches, custom experiences, live streams, and much more. For more information on Engage or to book talent today, visit letsengage.com.